Okay, in this video we're looking at a simple example using WebSockets. And the code for this is, so a simple example is inside of chat. Okay, so let me just demo this first. We have to have something running on the server. Okay, so we load up, type hello, load it up over here. Okay, so that shows up there and on any other connected clients. There's going to be two parts of this. One is the client and the other is the server. Let's take a look at the server first. This is the server. Now this is running. This has to be running already. This is running a node server. Okay, so we have this running on the server. It's a node that's running JavaScript, so the language here is JavaScript. The first thing that happens is we're including a module that does the WebSocket server. That's right there. And then this line here will create a new server that's listening on this port and waiting for a connection. So we have a variable called server that is of type WebSocket server that's going to be listening on this port. And then the first thing we do is we set up what happens when there's a new connection. So when there's a new connection, this function right here will run. Okay, so that client variable will be set to a new client, and then we just set up what happens with the client. So the client has a special thing called a message, and when a message comes in on a particular client, this is what we do. Inside of there we get the message, which is going to be a JSON encoded message. That means it's a JavaScript object, and if we say json.parse, then data will be some object that was sent from some client. And then this code here will just go ahead and through the server clients. So the server has a field called clients, and I have two cases here. They're really doing the same thing, but this is server.clients I is the client that sent this message, in case we wanted to do something different depending on whether it was the client that sent the message, yes or no. In either case, a new message, send a message to this client. That happens in either case. So all this does is when there's a message from some client, that message gets sent out to all the other clients. And when a client is closed or there's an error, there's a message. And so this is setting up what happens when a client sends a message, when a client closes, when there's an error, and then the last thing that happens on a new connection is that a message is sent to that client with this contents. So this is a JSON encoding. We have a variable here. This is how one way to create an object in JavaScript. The object has one member called message. The contents of that is welcome. And then json.stringify will set that up so it can be sent over the WebSocket. That's the server. So the server just sits there, takes messages and sends them out. The client looks like this. This is an HTML. There is an input text where text can be typed. That's right here. And there's a paragraph with ID log. Okay, and the JavaScript that runs is right here inside of a script tag. inside of the script tag, there's a function that doesn't have a name that's immediately run. And what happens inside of there, I have two variables, and there's a window.onload. So this will happen when the page loads. Okay, when the page loads, I set up an onKeyUp event. That's going to be this function right here. And that is tied to a tag with ID of message. That's this tag right here. That's this. So when there's a key up, this right here will run. Okay, so that's set up inside of the onload, and there's a new WebSocket, and this this port matches the one in the server. So I have a new socket that's connected. The server has to already be running. I have my server running there. Otherwise, this connection will fail. All right, when the connection opens, I can have some code that runs right there. I don't have anything. And then there's an on message in that connection as well. And this is what happens inside of my message. If there's a member variable called message, so if data.message is defined, then I just go and add that to a tag that has ID of log, and that's a paragraph right here. So there's a paragraph with ID log. And when there's a new message on the WebSocket, I get that log, and then I add on to the enter HTML whatever that message was, and a line break. So that goes to anybody that's connected. So and that goes to anybody that's connected because of the message event. So the message event was tied into the message, which was this, and the onKeyUp of that. If we look at the onKeyUp, that's this function here. It has a parameter that's the event, and depending on what browser you have, that'll event look. It could have slightly different values inside of it. So on let's see, in Firefox here, there will be a key member variable that has the value enter if I typed enter, or the key code is 13 for enter. So if either one of those happens, at least that'll work in Firefox. And what do? I get that message tag. The value will be message.value. And this is an object that has one member variable that's message, and the value is whatever was typed, and this JSON.stringify puts that in. And then I reset the value to be empty after I sent it. Okay, so just to recap the main things that are happening, there has to be a server. The server uses this module. There's different WebSocket modules. This is one of them. So the server has to be running on some particular port. You have to set up in the server variable what happens when there's a new message. So that's right there. And then in the client has to connect to the WebSocket. That happens in my onload. So there's the connection. And we want to say what happens when there's a new message. That's this function right here that will add the message to my paragraph. And then the client has to be set up to send a message when something happens. And the way I have that set up is I have an onKeyUp handler for my input tag, and whenever there's an enter, I send the value, whatever was there. Okay, so you should be able to, if you have an account on the CS server, you could make a copy in your account, in your public_HTML, copy over these two files, change the port to something else. Don't use this port. Use 603XY, where XY is your account number. Nobody else should be using that. And then so you would change that in the server, change it in the client, so in both places to be the same. If you run the chat server, you should be able to run this, and then you could change it to be whatever you want. If you forget to run the chat server, then you won't see a welcome message, and if you open up your console, when you load the page, you see an error message that says you couldn't establish a connection. Okay, so that is a simple WebSocket example.